All right, Steeler fans, it is the second half of the Friday Let's Ride podcast. And joining me, as he always does in the All Betz Are Off segment, Jerome Betz. What's up, Jeremy? How's it going?
Hey man, it's going good. Podcasting from work today, had a lot to do. So we're getting it done though. We'll talk some Steelers wherever we're at. That's right.
Hey, you're not a serious podcaster until at one point in time you were actually doing a podcast while you're at work. I mean, trust me,
Yeah.
I carried my microphone around for me for years, but still, let's talk about the game tonight. Let's talk about Friday night, Steelers, Texans, Acrisure Stadium. I think it's important to note, and I said this in the first half, CJ Stroud and a lot of the Texans playmakers are expected to play. Before we get to that side of the field, though, in terms of the Texans, I want to ask you individual players that you are looking forward to seeing. I gave 5 reasons to watch in the first half of this podcast, but I'm curious, are there any specific players? You can name as many as you'd like,
Yeah.
but let's try to be specific here. Let's be specific. Who are you looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, I think the crew of rookie offensive linemen kind of tops my list. Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier, Troy Fautanu, all the playing time they get is gold, in my opinion, for what we're looking for in a preseason matchup. You're talking about 3 guys who the Steelers are going to probably rely on pretty quickly in the future this year as well. Mason McCormick is kind of the one of those 3 that feels like is furthest away from putting in starting reps potentially based on what the Steelers have at the positions at guard ahead of them. But when you talk Zach Frazier, when you talk Troy Fautanu, those are 2 guys literally battling for day one starter positions at their respective spots. And whether or not they can hold their own in, I'm not going to say a hostile environment because it's Pittsburgh, it's their own stadium, but against another team, right? This isn't the same guys they've been practicing against all off season, the same guys that they've seen every day. This is new faces, new styles, a different scheme. And I know it's all going to be pretty vanilla, but you want to see these guys still handle their business and be a part of something bigger than themselves individually in what is the offensive line as a whole for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which for Arthur Smith's offensive scheme and for fans in general, we really need this offensive line to take a step forward in 2024. So those would be my big ones on offense. On the defensive side, though, I'm looking at the secondary. I'm looking at the young players back there, Corey Trice, Darius Rush, Beanie Bishop. How do they handle a new offense? Wide receivers that they've never seen before. They're going to get some run because you're talking about a Steelers team that likes to play a few guys that are starter worthy for a series or 2, and then after that it's all about the young and up and coming guys. And so how those guys handle business against what should be a very deep and very tough Houston wide receiver room, even if you take out the main starters, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell, this is a deep group. They've got John Mechie there in building, and they've got a bunch of guys that should be scary propositions for the secondary. We'll see how they handle it.
All right, I want to ask you about a specific player, and specificity might be the title of the segment today. Justin Fields is going to start the game, and Justin Fields is only going to play, as Mike Tomlin said, a few series. And I'm going to stand by that Mike Tomlin will play him based on how it goes. For instance, if they go out there first 2 drives, move down the field, whether they get points or not, it's neither here nor there. And then he might say, okay, you're good. And then he'll bring in Kyle Allen, and then Plumlee will get time. But what are you expecting from Justin Fields? And let's be, I mean, you can be as specific as you want, but like when you think about, okay, Justin Fields' first game action in a black and gold uniform, he's in Pittsburgh in front of the home crowd. This has got to be some pressure for him because this is an opportunity. So what do you think? What are you expecting?
Yeah, I think I expect him to be throwing the ball a lot. I wouldn't expect him to turn around and hand the ball off every play for his time in the game. I think the Steelers are going to want to see what he has to offer them. And at the same time, I think they're going to tell him, hey, be careful too. Don't you go scrambling for 15 yards and pull a hammy or tear an ACL or something like that, knock on wood, as we discuss it. But, it's still preseason action. Yes, he's trying to win a job. Yes, he's trying to compete here. and show this team what he has ability wise. But I don't think this is as big a deal for his starting potential maybe as it might be coming across. I know Mike Tomlin mentioned this is a quarterback competition. Both guys have a shot at the job still. The way it's being handled on the field tells me it's something a little bit different. We'll see. But to me, Justin Fields, what I expect out of him is reading the field, taking the plays that are there, not doing a lot of scrambling. I think it's going to be tossing the rock around to his different playmakers, getting them warmed up, letting this offensive line gel a little bit in front of him, and not putting too much stress on them. I don't think he's going to be sitting back there for 5-6 seconds like he's prone to do to make a play. Can he operate the structure of the offense, I guess, is more of the basic gist of what I think they will expect out of him and what I expect out of him as well in this first preseason game.
I mean, the more you talk, the more I start thinking about what I expect. And for me, you mentioned don't scramble. And to me, I don't want to see the scrambling not based off injury because, I mean, he's a well-trained athlete. I'm going to hope that his ACLs and hamstrings and groins can all sustain that and be fine. But I've seen him do it already. Like Justin Fields scrambling for 20 yards will be exciting, but it's not showing me anything. I've seen him do this in Chicago a million times. I want to see him do the stuff that everyone says he couldn't do. I want to see him, like you said, sit in the pocket in a timely fashion, read the field, deliver an accurate pass, move the ball. And if they have a drive like that is 2 first downs and it stalls and they punt, I don't care. I want to see him, go out there and put his best foot forward and see if he can answer some of the questions that a lot of people have about his skill set. And the one thing to keep in mind too is that we assume that Russell Wilson will probably be in the lineup in week 2. So this is his opportunity. And you think about the offensive line, only Isaac Seumalo is not going to be in the lineup on game day tonight on Friday night. So it's going to be interesting. Anything else that you're looking forward to watching tonight in the game against the Texans?
Oh man, I think I want to see some of the basic idea of what the Steelers are looking to do at the kickoff, and see how they're handling that. I know they've been playing Jalen Warren and John Rice Plumlee as the starting returners while Cordero Patterson has been sitting. And so how deep do they get into their bag of tricks with the kickoff? How detailed are they going to be? We've read and seen that Mike Tomlin's maybe more involved in this than some other coaches are in this new kickoff, and how he worked with the EA Madden team to put together what this would look like, and also seeing how it plays out in some kind of simulation. So he's been highly interested in this. And I think the initial signing of Cordero Patterson, as soon as this kickoff rule was implemented, speaks to that as well. He puts as big an emphasis on special teams as any coach in the league. And I think that how the Steelers handled the kickoff return, kickoff coverage, that's going to be a really interesting thing to me as well. We saw a little bit of it with the game last night and the Hall of Fame game the week before. But how the Steelers handle it, to me, is going to be more intriguing. Are they going to keep it vanilla for the preseason, or are they going to reach into their bag a little bit and see what works, see what doesn't, try to get ahead of the ballgame a little bit?
Yeah. All right. I have to ask you, because I know you've been glued to it like I have this week, and that is the rumor mill, and that is the Brandon Ayuk situation, which, as of this being recorded, and for those that don't know, on Thursdays was when we record this segment based on the fact that I have to get ready for the Steelers preview and a bunch of other stuff. So we do have to record this a little bit early. So if news breaks between now and this actually running on Friday morning, our apologies. But still, Brandon Ayuk, let me ask you a simple question. Is he worth all of this? Is he worth all of this if he comes to the Steelers? Let me ask you that very first and foremost.
So he is worth it, absolutely, if the deal makes sense for Pittsburgh. And I put that caveat on there because there's a lot of speculation out there, right? There's a lot of, well, could the Steelers do this? Could the Steelers do that? Could there be a third team involved? Could they ship off George Pickens? We know that's not going to happen, right? But all the speculation out there has led me to really just come to the realization that, yes, this guy is worth it, but only if the 49ers are willing to acquiesce to the Steelers' offer, not the other way around. The Pittsburgh Steelers and Omar Khan do not need to be upping their offer to make sure they land Brandon Ayuk. I don't think it's that important. Now, pairing him with George Pickens and Russell Wilson leading the charge this year and Justin Fields beyond that, whatever that is, that's extremely enticing if you want to build a team that has a ceiling of a AFC championship squad, of a Super Bowl contender potentially. I'm not saying necessarily 2024, but down the road. When you're talking about Brandon Ayuk specifically, though, if you have to stretch beyond what you feel comfortable with at all, and you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is not worth it. If you can make it happen for something that is comfortable to you, and you do not lose any ability at another spot, like you're not trading George Pickens for Brandon Ayuk, that's silly to me. You're not even maybe trading a starter on the offensive line. That's a little silly to me as well. But if you can make this work for the picks and get him in the building, I absolutely think the player is worth the contract that they would have to pay him. I think he's worth getting in the building, but only on their terms. It can't be on the 49ers' terms.
It's interesting because Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette finally chimed in. Hey, he's a lot of things, but timeliness is not his MO in terms of getting the breaking news out there. But he did provide some insight to what he's hearing from inside the building. We've heard that the Steelers are basically done. He's saying that there is no framework of a deal done, that the Steelers are not going to be giving up a player if they make a trade. That's interesting. And so now the latest news is that the 49ers want to get a pass catcher or a receiver back in this deal. And so they're trying to entice a third team to be involved. So maybe if the Steelers send a 2025 second round pick, they leverage that pick into someone else that they can acquire. That's neither here nor there. I think there's still a lot of red tape to get through, and the Steelers, if they're smart, and I think that Omar Khan and company are, they're just sitting there they're just sitting at the table with their arms crossed saying the deal is the deal. And either you get the deal, what you do with a second round pick or a third and a fifth, whatever they give up, whatever you do with that is your business. This is what we want. And so it's going to be interesting, but I just hope that's the thing for me. And the first question I asked you is, I just hope it's worth it. I hope that Brandon Ayuk, if he is acquired, comes in and is dynamic, and that he shows that it wasn't a system thing in San Francisco, that it wasn't, well, I'm just a part of Kyle Shanahan's cog, and you just put any receiver in there and they're fine. You don't think he's that type of player? You think he's a special player?
I do. I think he's a special talent. I think his ability to set up defenders it's one of the best you'll see in the league. If you watch the tape, even on plays where he's not being targeted, where he's not the guy that is the number one in the design of the play for this Kyle Shanahan offense, he's still beating his defender very often. And he's a regular contributor as a blocker. He's willing to engage downfield, but the way he sets up routes, the way he gets in and out of breaks, his superpower is getting to the outside and forcing defenders to just look silly in the process. The Steelers don't have somebody that can do that. Even Deontay Johnson, to me, he was a fantastic route runner, but his ability to finish at the catch point and afterwards, it's not anywhere close to what Ayuk brings to the table. So he would be a massive upgrade on DJ from last year and would provide the Steelers something they don't have, while also being able to be physical and work at the catch point as well.
All right. Fantasy nugget. Do you have one this week for the Steelers?
I do, but it's kind of reversed for the Steelers. I'm looking at George Pickens, and what I want to do is learn a little bit about what Pickens could do in this Arthur Smith offense as the number one receiver. And I know we're talking about bringing Brandon Ayuk in, but that being a still more projection than anything at this point, speculation, I want to treat George Pickens as the wide receiver one. But I looked back at Drake London, and he had 10 games last year out of the 16 he played, 17 he played. No, I'm sorry, 16 he played. He had the bye week and he was hurt 1 week. So 10 out of 16 games, he had 7 or more targets as the de facto wide receiver one for this team, even though Kyle Pitts at tight end was taking a large share of targets as well. Now we have to keep in mind there was extremely poor quarterback play there in Atlanta last year. But you take a look at what Drake London is, the type of player that he is. He's a high volume, big bodied target on the outside, does a lot of the same things that George Pickens does. I'm thinking that the target share for London is something that we'll see echoed pretty closely in George Pickens' stats this year. He's going to get a lot more targets than he did last year. He's going to up his game, I think, with better quarterback play. I think he's an absolute steal. If when the time it's all said and done, George Pickens is a top 15, top 10 wide receiver as the Steelers' number one receiver this year, for fantasy purposes, that would not shock me at all based on the offense he's in, the skill set he has, and the utilization I expect for him this year.
That's good stuff, man. That's really good. I hope it comes to fruition, like you said.
Yep.
Well, while we got a minute, what do you have coming up on, whether it's the website, podcasting, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so my power rankings are done. You can check those out on steelcurtainnetwork.com, ranking all 32 teams to see where I have the Steelers. It's right on the edge, where we've kind of seen them the last few years. Yeah. I think they have a chance to work their way up those as well, though. But I'm going to be doing a deep dive into each of the rosters in the AFC North over the next couple weeks. We're doing shows according to that as well on the Steelers Fix. And then the Draft Dynasty podcast, we're wrapping up our division look this coming week. And then after that, it's going to be rankings and really diving in for fantasy drafts as the season gets underway.
Awesome stuff, Jeremy. As always, hey, thanks. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll be back next week to talk about it. So take it easy.
Thanks, Jeff. Have a good one.
You too.